let's just sew whatever. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I would love to learn to say something else, but today we are making the Petite tailor tote. The tailor tote is one of my patterns, and the Petite comes from chopping 2 inches off the top of those pattern pieces to make it shorter. You can do that with anything, except people. Don't do that with people. So it turned out really cute. Not gonna lie. It's like a whole new bag. So we did exterior option 2, which is this pieced panel. It has slip pockets here. You can do it on both sides or just the one. We did interior option 1, which is just the zipper panel and a zipper pocket, and you can also add a cargo pocket. I just ended up adding a tag over here. I think it's a nice size crossbody / work bag / I need a lot of things in my purse. We also did it as a drop-in lining and added a crossbody strap. We also made it so that it's just little grab handles. You can do that with webbing, or you could add the hardware as the pattern originally instructs, but here we're just having some fun. So hope you'll join me to make this today. I hope you'll grab the tailor tote if you have not already. It is a lot of pattern, but there are so many different options, so many ways you can make it unique and your own and have fun with it. So let's get to sewing it while my cat wreaks havoc everywhere. Oh, good. Hello, Evermore. Evermore. Why is this chaos? My labels. I don't need these clips here yet. Okay. So let's get into making the tailor tote Petite. Oh, I forgot I made it shorter. I'm so excited. All right, we've got our handles here, our slip pockets. I've got my lining. I'm gonna kind of move that out of the way, and I'm gonna focus on my front panels here. So I'm gonna get started on my slip pockets. I've got those clipped right sides together, and you can use pretty much any seam allowance you really want to sew across the top and the bottom of these slip pockets. I'm gonna go ahead and do 1/4 inch, just so I kind of keep that consistent for these panels, because this is 1/4 inch seam allowance to put all that together. Make sure your right sides are together and things aren't shifting. I am using a mid-weight Luxe vinyl along with a waterproof canvas light. So I'm using the like green brush strokes vinyl. And this waterproof canvas light is called Blue Minty Twist. So I think it's named after gum. All right, so we're gonna turn that little loop of fabric so it's right side out, and then fold across the top and the bottom. And we're gonna top stitch across the top edge only, and we're gonna sew it in place across the bottom once we've got it ready to go. You don't need to do any trimming to your seam allowance. If you think you've got quite a bit of bulk, you can try to reduce the bulk within your seam allowance. But I think with the materials we've picked, we're gonna be just fine. All right, this print isn't super directional, so I'm just gonna do what feels right to me and top stitch only across that top edge. If you would have wanted to add a nameplate to that slip pocket, now before this would have been a great time. Okay, so we're going to take our middle panel, and you're going to want to place this, I think the pattern says about 1 inch from the bottom. Yeah, I think 1 inch from the bottom is still good. Great, good job. And so we're just going to lay the ruler in place and set that up against the bottom. And I'm just going to sew across the bottom. If you want, you can use 2 rows of stitching to place that. I think 1 will be fine. Okay, so ruler straight up against the edge. Make sure that bottom panel, the bottom of this slip pocket sits right up against that ruler. And then we'll top stitch that down. Okay. I'm so excited. I forgot. I cut these out Saturday, and today is Tuesday. I forgot. Okay, so now we're going to attach our side panels, and these are all mirror images of each other. So you're going to want to make sure you're setting up your panels correctly, and if your prints are directional, make sure you keep an eye with what you've got connected. If you're wanting to add maybe a woven label instead of like a larger nameplate or something, this would be a great seam to place that into. And we are going to do 1/4 inch. And that 1/4 inch is so you have more pocket space, but please make sure you don't mess that up. We're also not going to be trimming that seam allowance down. So then you can press this open and top stitch, but I want to add my other panel and then I'll top stitch it. You could also baste the sides of your pockets on if you think some shifting might occur. 1/4 inch, and I'm back stitching at the beginning and the end. Alright, so now we're going to open that flat, and you're going to be top stitching on your accent fabric. My stitch length is at about a 4.5, and I'm good with that. We're going to do this about 1/8 inch from that edge. Oh, this is going to be so cute. And now, if you're adding like strap connectors or something, you would add those into that panel, but we're going to be doing little grab handles, so I'm just going to set that aside for now and work on the other one. Make sure that the curve of your panel is at the bottom, so your pocket is open at the top. And if you didn't want to interface these separately, you could put all of this together and then use a large piece of maybe foam and interface it that way. And just baste it all together or something. I did start with 2 full bobbins for this project. And I think it'll be just enough. All right, so those panels are done. Make sure your pocket is open at the top. And I'm gonna do the handles. So I'm just doing really cute little grab handles. I figured this would make a really nice crossbody. And for me, I like a small grab handle on a crossbody. I don't always want an arm crook or a shoulder strap, but you can definitely make this longer if you wish. So we're gonna fold this right up against each other on the center. And I'm using a Luxe vinyl that I carry on my website for this pretty like green accent. And this color is called Island Reef. It's just such a pretty like sea glass almost, but like not, because it's also kind of green. All right, and then I like to do about 3 inches, but you could probably do, we'll do 2.5 just to make it so that there's less flat part of the handle. So 2.5 inches in from each short end. And we're gonna fold this in half to create like a faux rolled handle. So we're folding that in half on itself. And we're gonna sew from one end with our marks to the other. You could also do this with webbing instead of vinyl. You just kind of fold it in half, top stitch one side, and then you've got this faux rolled handle. And I call it a faux rolled handle because a real one has like stuff inside of it, which I mean, I guess you could still add stuff inside of it, like a tube of piping, but I think this feels really nice. And then this is going to get laid on the bag with the wrong side of your strap face up. So you want to see that little sectioned spot face up so that it's against the bag when it's completed. I think I'm gonna center this on that panel. That distance feels right for the height that I'm doing. You can see it's a nice loop that it's created. It's not too stretched out, and it'll stick up a little bit perkier. So we're just centering that. And however long you cut your grab handle, if you're doing one like this, that's going to dictate where you place yours. Or you can just follow the instructions, but I think proportionally that feels right. So then I'm gonna baste that down into place there. And then this is our upper panel, so that's just gonna get placed right over top of all of that. And everything should fit nicely. If it doesn't fit from end to end, that's gonna be because of either a seam allowance issue when you pieced your panels together, or because of the bulk of your strap. So you just kind of want to stretch it out a little bit over all of that to make sure it fits. Okay, so then it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Most of this bag is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Keep everything lined up as best as you can. And then we're going to flip this up and top stitch through the accent, and you'll see now our handle sits up top. pull on those layers, and you're top stitching through the seam allowance over all of that. So you want to make sure you're using materials that aren't too bulky for your machine as well. Oh my goodness. This is so cute. I love the height of that pocket. And so that pocket will fit a phone perfectly. I'm tempted to add my nameplate maybe off to the side over here, maybe. I don't know, because like if it's up here, maybe I'll do it like right up there. Yeah, I think that'll be good. So we'll center this on that slip pocket area. And it is a tight slip pocket, so I apologize for that. I think it holds things snugly. Okay, so we're going to seam rip where our nameplate's gonna go. Nice. And you just want to make sure you've got plenty of space to top stitch the bag. So be careful where you place that. So that is one of our exterior panels. And now we're going to work on our other handle so we can finish the other panel. And so I did a 2.5 inch distance from that short end to fold the long raw edges toward each other. Fold it in half and start on one end, making sure you back stitch, and then we're coming all the way down to the other end. Finishing that off. So wrong side face up. You want to see the seam of your strap so that way we can hide it when we add everything together. And you can rivet through this handle later as well if you wanted to further hide where they connect this area here. Flattening that down. And as close to 1/4 inch as you can get. Nope, 1/2 inch. And that gets folded up so that we've got this lovely seam to top stitch through. right, and then we can mark our centers at the bottom. And I'm gonna go based off of also making sure that my section panel is centered. We don't really need to mark the top center, but I'm lining up these side seams here, making sure everything lines up. There's that. So we can set that aside for a little bit and we can work on our gusset, exterior gusset. I have a crossbody strap, but I'm not gonna work on that yet. Probably should, but oh well. All right, so we've got our upper side panels, our lower side panels, our bottom panel, and our strap connectors. So the strap connectors, I'm gonna fold these in half. And you can top stitch this at 1/8, or you could top stitch it at 1/8 and 3/8, or 1/8 and 1/4. We'll just go all the way down. And my AC just turned on, so I'll be right back. So as I was saying before, my AC decided to be rude. All right, we've got our strap connectors top stitched. We're gonna add our hardware, whether that's D-rings or triangle rings, and we're gonna baste up against the edge at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm laying the edge of my vinyl that is folded together to the 1/2 inch mark on my plate. This is so my pieces are basted together and I'll know where 1/2 inch is when I put all of this together so that they're within my seam allowance by 1/2 inch. I am making a snip at the center of the top of that side channel, and that is so I know where to place this connector piece. So I'm basting that on there again, centered. So finding the center to place my connector and lining that top edge of the side panel up with that 1/2 inch mark, well, 1/2 inch row of stitches. So now I know that piece is 1/2 inch in my seam allowance without having to do any like special measuring or anything like that. So then we're gonna add our upper side panel at as close to 1/2 inch as we can. Again, this may not line up perfectly because of the bulk of your connector. So just kind of center it out or kind of stretch it just a little bit. It could also be that maybe your vinyl shrank when you fused it. That can definitely happen. We're gonna top stitch that on. And then we're gonna flip this whole seam down and top stitch through everything. Cutie. All right, then we'll add our bottom panel. This is going to get attached to the bottom of your side panel. 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way across. And you can open that up and top stitch through the bottom. And we'll repeat with the other side of our gusset. And I like to push the bulk toward the bottom of the bag, but you could also kind of butterfly that open if you'd prefer. And then we'll snip in the center. So we're actually almost done with our exterior, which is pretty cool. So we're going to clip the bottom first, finding our centers. And I will usually clip that until I get to the bottom seam. Clip that. And then we're going to line up the top edge and where our pieces connect. Lining up our accent pieces. And then I'll work my way down, clipping along the side edge and repeat that. I leave the bottom curve unclipped and I'm holding my project over the free edge of my sewing machine table so that I can keep everything flat. This bag was designed to be sewn flat, so we're going to be snipping into the side panel to then stretch it to meet that curve. So you're snipping the side panel, not your curved piece, but that is going to help make it so that straight side panel becomes curved. It fits just right. Okay. And then if you're worried about things slipping, you could add some staples. I'm going to sew this using that same like 4.5, and it's going to be about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think one of the most important things is that you're sewing next to but not through your interfacing. Continue up to the top. And now I'm going to do a second row of stitching just along the curve, about 1/8 of an inch from my last row of stitching, so within the seam allowance. This will just help reinforce and get our curves to sit really nicely next to each other, or not next to each other, but in general. Okay, and then I'm going to just trim along the bottom. We've got 2 rows of stitching to reinforce that bottom panel, so I'm not worried about things coming loose. And then that just goes hopefully in the trash. So then you'll see how nice the curve looks. So cute. All right. Next side. We're going to find the bottom centers first. And I'm clipping it from a different direction, but I'm still clipping it with the same thought process in mind, and then I'm going to flip it over. I would not worry too much about everything at the very, very top lining up if you maybe had some seam allowance differences or things were cut a little bit differently. I would focus on getting your accent pieces, those seams to line up, because it's going to be obvious if they don't. Okay, so we're going to flip this now. We've got this side clipped pretty well, but not this side. And I'm pushing into the existing, the corner I've already sewn, kind of pushing into that to help it fit. So we'll press it over the edge of the machine. I'm going to manipulate that as best I can. If it's not quite fitting, you could always add a couple more snips or just press on it a little bit more. Add some more clips, and then if you need to staple, staple. Just staple at about 1/8 of an inch. We have a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, so you have some wiggle room on that. I will say I'm very proud of how this gusset fits. Within the pattern, not necessarily right now, this second. Although hopefully that too. Sewing all the way across. When we finish sewing that seam together, we're going to sew just the curve now. I don't think that part's in the pattern. I think this is a newer technique that has surfaced and definitely works. That is our exterior completed. If you are going to be doing a drop-in lining for this bag, you would mark about 1 inch across the top, tape and fold this down, or just kind of fold it right at that interfacing because it'll kind of want to sit naturally there. I'm debating if I want to do that. I kind of think I'm going to. Let's do it. I think it'll actually be nice to not have to birth this. All right, so I'm not even going to mark the seam allowance. I'm just going to place a piece of tape right at the top of my interfacing. Because like I said, your fabric is going to want to just sit right up against the top edge. Can't really fight that. And so I'm doing 4 separate pieces of tape just to make it a little bit easier. Oh, 4, not 3, 4. Butterflying the seam, but you can move it however you want, honestly. Taping that down, and then I'm going to clip at the top to help me keep that together. All right. All of that clipped together. And now I'll turn the bag right side out, because when you do a drop-in liner, you're essentially just preventing having to turn the bag all different ways. You just have it the way you need it. Press those curves out nicely, and the interfacing should kind of relax those wrinkles after a while. If not, you can warm your ironing board a little bit just to help smooth them out. Okay. Oh my gosh, the shape is so cute. Okay, so I'm going to clip these together like that just to help it keep its shape while we work on the rest of the bag. I think it's looking really cute. I'm gonna put my triangle rings face down. It's like a whole new bag, truly. All right, let's go ahead and start our lining. I don't even know who I am. I haven't done my crossbody strap. Insane. I'm gonna start on my gusset for my lining, because this is that same process, only without our strap connectors. And we're gonna be putting right sides together for the bottom panel and the side panel. 1/2 inch seam allowance across the bottom. And then it's totally up to you if you want to top stitch that or not. I'm going to just 'cause. And I'm just gonna press the bulk of that seam to the bottom. top of that piece, 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you can just kind of trail those together. And we're going to flip that and top stitch through your lining fabric through that seam allowance. And then we'll snip our bottom centers. And I didn't cut my little jump thread, so I was doing that really quick. All right, that we can set aside for now. We only have a zipper pocket and zipper panel cut for this bag, so I only need 2 zippers. This is our upper lining panel. We can set that aside for now. We can work on our zipper pocket or the zipper panel. So we'll just do our zipper pocket really quick. I'm going to apply double-sided tape to the top and bottom edges of our zipper overlay. And I'm going to cut my zipper tape to about 1 inch longer than I need. And I'll grab my 2 zipper pulls that I need. I'm going to attach my zipper pull to my zipper. And you can do that after. I just like to do it at the same time. And that's why I cut my zipper longer, so I don't have to worry about the pull being in the way. And then I'm going to cut this zipper to about 17 inches. And then we're done with our zipper tape. And I'll go ahead and add this zipper pull as well so I don't forget. So now I've got all of my zippers prepped. And for the zipper panel, we're going to need to square off or round off this edge of our zipper. So all I'm doing is folding the fraying edge essentially to meet the non-fraying side edge. And I'm going to use my lighter to melt them together. Just be careful you don't burn yourself. You could also use double-sided tape. You could base stitch it. I know there was a trend where you like fold it on itself and then sew the back at an angle, and I'm like, nah. So I find this works really well for me. Just taking the lighter till it starts to melt and pressing it against the edge. And then I'll just kind of let that sit. There's nothing saying you can't glue it either, to be honest. So there's an idea. There's a thought. All right, we only need 1 lining panel. So we'll start there. And I'm gonna grab my ruler. I think maybe 1.5 inches from the top edge. We will center our overlay. And you want to make sure you're not stretching your overlay. You just want to make sure it sits nicely into place. And then you can add a little woven tag to that overlay. All right, my stitch length is set to about a 4.5. I'm lowering my needle. I've got my thread tails long, and I'm gonna top stitch around the outer edge. Keeping your needle down as you pivot. And then we'll pull our threads to the back and hold on to those. Okay. Tie our first row together first. Our first set of threads, I should say. And then pull the other one to the back. We'll get those as well. Make sure your tension when you're pulling those isn't too tight and too loose. Want it just right. All right, now we're gonna cut the excess, not our finger, not our vinyl, just the excess lining fabric away. Like that. And we can melt these down. Okay. Cute. All right, we're gonna add our lining fabric to our zipper. So we want these both facing up, zipper facing up, and I'm lining up the edge without the zipper pull with the edge of my fabric, and I'm going to baste that into place at about 1/4 of an inch. And then repeat. This time we're putting our lining right sides together, and our zipper is still face up because we are creating the lining of that pocket. We're going to press this nice and flat, keeping both edges of the pocket up and out of the way. We'll add some double-sided tape kind of over your stitching on the top and the bottom. We're going to peel off the bottom row of tape first, centering that zipper within the overlay. Hello? Okay, once you've got one side good, then you can worry about peeling the other side. Make sure everything is smooth, no weird ripples. Lining is all up and out of the way. We're going to top stitch under through the lining of all of that. Long thread tails, stopping and starting about 1/8 of an inch from the edges of your zipper box. We'll pull our threads to the back. I'm not gonna lie, I used to hate this method, and I think slowly over time, Shannon from Knotted Threads Co. bullied me. No, I'm just kidding. No, she encouraged me to do it. She's like, just do it. Like, you know you can do it. It's like, I don't have the mental energy for that. You gotta line things up, and I just don't want to do it. She's like, just do it. All right, we're gonna press this open. Get a nice crisp, flat edge. Then we're gonna lay this edge down as well. Okay. So if you're starting on this side, you need your zipper pull in. If you start on this side, you don't yet. So I'm going to start over there. Keep your needle in the hole where you started. Pivot when you're top stitching around. And now I've cut my zipper tape long enough so that I see my pull. Hello, it's not where it should be. So I'm gonna go as far as I can, which for my pop tab pulls I know is just from end to end, not across the center of that overlay. And I'm gonna push my zipper pull back in, making sure I don't get it caught on the lining. And this is easiest for me so that I know that my zipper tape isn't going to get all kerfuffled, because right now it has stayed together until this very last part. And then we'll leave our thread tails long, stopping your needle in the hole you started or ended, depending on which side you're on. Pull those threads to the back and tie them off. All right, now we can cut this excess zipper tape away. And since I am not turning this bag through the zipper pocket, I can go ahead and close that up. So I'm going to sew along the sides. Right now my lining pocket is too long, so I'm just stopping where it feels right for the length, sewing across the bottom, and then back up the top. And then we can trim the excess at the bottom. And that is your zipper pocket complete. You can check it out. Yep. All right, so that side's done. That side is technically done. We can add a woven label or a cork tag. I know I have a bunch of cork tags. I'm like, what do I want to add? Something green, stitched by light of night. It matches. Okay. Kind of like this "Be the reason someone smiles today" tag. I don't know, it just has the vibes, I think. Oh, I love those too. Yes, I think that's the winner. Oh, I can put it away. You could do that. I think the SAS formation tags are some of my favorites. They say fuck your negativity and like kick today's ass, things like that. And then the you've got this tags are also gorgeous, but be the reason someone smiles today. And I think it works. And I have the little template ruler. I don't think this is the size. No, it's not the size of these. That's okay. So they make those custom based on like your tags. But I can center this, no problemo. It's just a little 2-inch guy. It's just so precious. Get out of here. All right, got that on. All right, zipper panel time, and then we're almost done. Except our crossbody strap, and every part of me is like, do your crossbody strap. I'm like, no. All right, so I've already marked at my cutting table that 1-inch line from each short end of the zipper panel. And so I'm just gonna kind of line up that line, grab some 1/2-inch double-sided tape, press it all the way across. We'll lift that up and fold to meet that line. And because the tape I'm using I can easily rip with my hands, I do that. I just rip it with my hands. So if your panel has a direction, you could line that up. Aha, this one does. And then I add double-sided tape where my zipper is gonna go. So if your print is directional and you want it to stay in a certain place, then you can add your tape where your zipper is gonna go. So you'll add one to your exterior and one to your lining. And you don't have to, you could clip instead. I just find this easier for me. All right, then we're gonna have an exterior and a lining together on each side, and we're gonna start by placing our zipper. We've got our prepped zipper. Our corners are rounded off and not fully adhered together. Let's try that again. But we're gonna lay our zipper about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch from that folded edge. So that way it's not right up against the edge and it doesn't overhang, because this is our finished edge. So you want that to be hidden within the seam allowance so you can't unzip your zipper. We'll take off that tape and we're gonna lay this right sides together over our zipper. And then you can unzip that. That way you can get as close to that 3/8 as possible. We're starting at about 1/8 of an inch in from that folded edge and then ending at the same spot. You just don't want to sew over the edge of the fabric or you'll see your stitching where you don't want to see it. Then we can press this open. Both sides. Fold those taped edges to meet each other. Make sure they line up nicely. We're just going to clip that together. And then I'm going to start up here at this edge. There's a raw edge. We're starting in, we've backstitched over there. We don't want to see any of that backstitching. Sewing along the edge where the zipper is located. Stopping with our needle down in that corner and pivoting to finish off that folded edge, and then we're going to come down our raw edge just to baste it all together. There we go. So that is our half of our zipper panel complete. We're just going to repeat all that on the other side. Take off the tape there. Lining up all of our lining pieces. Making sure you don't stretch your zipper too much. And then we're going to place the exterior. Three-eighths of an inch. Pressing open that seam. All right, and then wherever you start, just make sure it isn't next to your zipper. Hide your back stitching. And if you're pivoting and you do not want to get a skipped stitch, make sure that you stop with your needle in the down position, coming back up so that it completes that loop. And then you'll prevent that from happening. Okay, zipper panel complete. We can just kind of tack this end of our zipper shut to make sure it doesn't open up over time. All right, we're gonna fold this in half on itself and mark the center. I like to start adding my zipper panel where I already have a zipper so that they're zipping in the same direction. If you don't want them to zip in the same direction, then don't do that. Have them zip in the opposite direction. It's your bag, you can do what you want. All right, we'll clip all of that together. If you are worried about your zipper panel shifting, you can baste that down. We're going to sew this together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to flip this up and top stitch through the lining. So your seam allowance is down. So it's a perky zipper panel. Repeating this on the other side. Right sides together, matching the center. Taping my, you could tape your zipper panel down, but placing the zipper panel down. And this goes pretty close to the side edges because we're adding a gusset. So I'm trying to think of how I'm trying to explain this. With like a boxed bag, you might have more room on the sides, but since this has a gusset, we want that zipper panel to be as close to the side edges as we can without, of course, creating something we can't sew through. But if you're doing a boxed bottom type bag, chances are you're going to have a wider gap. All right, we just ran out of bobbins, so that's good. Part of me is like, make your strap now then, but I know I'll have enough. It's not a big deal. Okay, we're gonna flip this up. And top stitch through here. Through the lining just like the other side, making sure that you're not sewing through anything you shouldn't be. Okay. Now we can add our completed gusset. You might be thinking, oh, I'll just put right sides together and stitch around. No. Then you would have lost your gusset and your mind. Just kidding. Okay, so we can open it up. We can put right sides together. And we are going to be starting with a 1/2 inch seam allowance across the top. And down inside the lining, we'll be increasing to about a 5/8. So lining up that top edge, clipping these together. Remember on our exterior how we kind of left that bulk of the gusset to the curve? We're going to repeat that. We're not going to clip that yet. You can if you want, but I like to just clip my sides and then I'll snip into this gusset here. Like that. Okay, 1/2 inch at the top, making sure that your panels are lined up, all those seams. All right, we're getting toward the curve, so I'm going to press that to fit. And kind of massage out any wrinkles that might be happening. And you're increasing your seam allowance here so that your lining fits perfectly inside the bag with no gaping. And even if you're just increasing by like 1/8 of an inch, well, that's what we're doing, but just the tiniest bit is an improvement. So if you're thinking, well, 5/8 is just too much for me, just go a little bit past the 4 in the bottom of the bag. And then as you're getting back to the top, go ahead and stick back to the 1/2 inch seam allowance. And just like we did on the exterior to help with that curved shape, you can do a second row of stitching. This is also just reinforcing your stitches. I'll just trim that down. I don't think any of that has been going into the trash. Oh! Goodness. All right, and then we're just continuing clipping right sides together. Opening that gusset, I was like, wait, what am I looking at here? Laying that flat, snipping into the curve here. Starting at the 1/2 inch. Slowly increase and line up the curves. Back to the 1/2 inch and make sure those edges line up. Second row of stitching. The thread that I'm using is from Geeky Hardware, and it is Under the Sea. It's just like a perfect combo of colors for this. Okay, our lining is done. We're gonna tape, just like we did on the exterior, we're gonna tape right under where that interfacing starts at the top so that we can fold down. Because we are not birthing the bag, we are going to do a drop-in lining. So we're just dropping the lining inside of the exterior. Which, if you have a lot of pain in your hands, can be really helpful to do it this way. All right, we've got all that taped. Normally you would mark a line to fold this to, but this interfacing helps keep that shape, so I'm not really worried about that. I'm just gonna fold it right up against the edge of that interfacing and clip it down. I'm butterflying the seam, but you could also kind of reduce the bulk by trimming it and like turning it. Starting in the middle, working my way out, pinching it down over top the seam allowance, over the interfacing. The colors on this are just so pretty. Pardon me, I can't get over it. And like the light gold with it, it's very refreshing, feels like. So now this is going to sit inside of our exterior. I like my zipper pocket to go against the back of the bag. So we'll plop that in. And then we'll line up our side seams, making sure they meet. And I sometimes will tape the layers together. You could glue them if you know you're using a glue your vinyl might not react strangely to. And that just helps prevent any shifting. And you want to remove clips as you're placing them together, because the bulk of the clips could kind of change the shape of the bag. If you're not careful. Okay, and if you have like center markings that you want to go off of to line these up, you can do that. I'm sorry, I'm just obsessed with the midweight lux. It's so perfect. The interfacing, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is the bag ready to go. And you'll see that when you've got that bag zipped, that zipper panel sits just in the right spot. Oh my gosh. It's so cute. It almost feels like a bigger bag somehow, but it's not. It's smaller. But it's just, it's so cute. Okay, I have to make my crossbody strap. I just got to. So, I've marked down the center I'm going to increase my stitch length to a 5. I'm going to start by folding the long raw edges in towards the center. And I'm not going right at the center line. I'm leaving a little bit of room. So that we have room to kind of fold it over. And I'm working from the center out so that we don't have any strap twisting. I'm also not like stretching it. I'm just gently pressing all of those layers together. Okay, and then we're going to fold this over. I like to start at the top of the folded over edge. We're going to go all the way down. And I think before I top stitch, I'm going to change my needle. I also probably need to oil my machine. Oh my gosh. Evermore, stop it. All right. So snap hook, slide adjuster, snap hook. And then you could choose to rivet this or sew it. And I am using wide mouth sliders that I carry on my website to account for the bulk of the vinyl. Oops. Evermore, stop it. Don't play with the cords, okay? Just don't. And then we'll top stitch through this. Evermore, stop it. All right, strap complete. So you could switch to a cylinder arm. Mine is there, and I should. But I'm not going to. I know. I am going to change my needle though. Just feels like a good time. My favorite size needle to use is a size 19. I know I'm crazy. Just feels like the one, you know? Just me and size 19 needles forever and ever. But depending on your thread or your materials, it may not work for you. Maybe your machine. So whatever works for you. So if you wanted to rivet this, you could rivet it through this panel after you're done top stitching, and that would look really cute. But just remember, you would see it there. And keep your zipper panel out of the way. You don't want to rivet through your zipper panel. That would be not the best. Wouldn't be the worst, but definitely not the best. Okay, so I'm going to top stitch it with my lining side up, which is kind of crazy, but I'm okay with it. And I'm also going to start it behind a strap, and you want to make sure that you're holding your threads to start. Okay. Keeping your layers together. And I want to make sure that I can kind of see both the exterior and the lining. Together. So your handles stay flat and out of the way. And again, just kind of pressing those together. All right. And I'm pulling on the threads I started with. And there we go. Kind of reshape that. Pulling the threads to the back. And then I'm just taking a lighter and singeing it shut. All right, so then you can add a strap end or add like a little piece of vinyl to that if you wanted. I'm not gonna rivet the handles. I was just saying you could. Well, it would be cool. It would help keep them up, but I think also you could kind of train them to stay that way over time as well. But then we can go ahead and add our crossbody strap. And so this bag I would say would be a really nice size crossbody. The regular tailor tote isn't bad, it's just also kind of, you know, it's tall. But there she is. Who's that wonderful girl? Could she be any cuter? I love it. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I want to know if you're going to make a petite, I almost said petite Elaine, a petite tailor tote. I do have a video for a petite Elaine, and the Elaine handbag is one of my older patterns. And again, I'm cutting 2 inches off the top to make it shorter. You could do that with anything, except people. Don't do that with people. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye. God damn it. Oh my gosh, ever more. I swear to God. Okay, I'm fine. I'm gonna go lay down after the stress of that cat.